My name is Jennifer Fleck. I represent We the People Lake Travis. We're the ones putting on this forum today. We started as a group back in 2020, actually after the 2020 election, early 2021. Our goals are to register voters, get voters informed. That's what tonight is about. We want informed voters voting, right? Just don't go and click on your favorite name or your sister's name or whatever it is. We want voters to be engaged in the community, and then of course we want you to vote. So those are the things that we care about. Those are our goals, and we accomplish those goals in a lot of different ways. We put out a weekly email. If anybody's interested, you can go to wethepeoplelaketravis.com. I put out a weekly email that just informs the community on all kinds of events that are happening in the community, how to get involved, and what's going on in politics. Politics. Also, we also have a new Facebook page if you'd like to join the Facebook page, We the People Lake Travis. And also our next event is May 9th. It's at Star Hill Ranch on Hamilton Pool Road. If you haven't ever been to that venue, it's a beautiful venue in our community. And we are hosting Brandon Strock of the Lakeway movement and Owen Schroyer. And both of them, what they have in common and they're coming to speak to us about is their January 6th prosecution and how that actually went out. I am an attorney, so, and as we all know, AI can make anything happen, right? Like, they can make sharks appear on Shark Week that don't really exist. They can make people appear, people do things, people look different. I always love to see someone in person, right? I want to see someone in person. I want to see the event in person so that I have an opinion that's based on personal knowledge. And so that's why we're inviting these two men to come. I would love for you guys to join us and hear their stories firsthand. Okay, 6:57, I promised to start on time. So we're actually starting a couple minutes early. The first question, each candidate will have 3 minutes. Basically, they have 3 minutes to give an introduction to themselves and why they're running. And then every question after that, the response will be limited to 2 minutes. And then we'll use these cards as backfill for more questions that have been given up here from the audience. If anybody has a question that they'd like me to ask, there's no cards up here, and you can bring a new question up here, and I'll try to weave it in as best as I can. We're going to go at least an hour. Okay, this is too high. How do I make this lower? Sorry, this will be bothering me every time.
Right in the middle there.
Their responses will be limited to 2 minutes. We're going to go at least an hour. If you guys start to get fidgety, I'm paying attention, and I think you want to leave and you're ready to go home, then we're going to end at 8. If everybody is still and paying attention and wants to hear more, then we'll keep going. No later than 8:30, 8:45, okay? Try to hold your discussion. If you need to answer them, if everybody will turn their ringers off, please, that would be greatly appreciated. I've been a candidate before, and everything is disruptive sometimes. If you need to take a phone call or you need to have a conversation, please go outside. Each of the candidates have brought their own campaign materials. If you'd like to take a yard sign, please do that on your way out. We also have cards back there for the We the People event that I just described. Okay. The candidates are sat in ballot order. They drew at the city this ballot order randomly, and the candidates have agreed to sit in ballot order. So we're all about reducing confusion for the voters. Okay, so this is helpful. All right, Kelly's going to go first. Kelly, please introduce yourself and give the motivating factor for running for council, including but not limited your family, how long you've lived in Lakeway, and all the ways you've served the city prior to running, and including while serving on council for the incumbents. Is there something that triggered your desire to run for council? This is the same question for every candidate. I'm not going to repeat the question. We're just going to, each person's going to go one at a time for 3 minutes. Go ahead.
Thank you, Jennifer. Test.
Hi, my name is Kelly Brentison, and I'm running for Lakeway City Council. My husband and I are proud 17-year residents of the city. He actually lived here back in the early 90s and wanted to return someday. We have actually got married here in Lakeway. My 2 children were actually born at the Lakeway Hospital. Now they're in LTISD schools. Go Mustangs. We're proud Lakeway Elementary folks. The reason why I got started in politics is when it started personally affecting me and my family. We had development and we had some road issues off Flint Rock Road. I felt we needed a voice on council, and I raised my hand to do it. I started working with the city, going to all city council meetings, advocating for myself as well as my fellow residents prior to being elected. I was elected in 2022. I have a long history of a lot of experience with the city. First, I was actually on the Arts Committee prior to being elected. I attended all city council meetings prior to that. That gave me the information necessary to be able to be an effective council member. Since then, I'm actually sit on 4 appointments. Can't even believe it's 4. First one, I'm the council liaison for the Arts Committee, makes sense. Number 2, I'm on PUD Review and Development Agreement Committee. I'm also the liaison for COG for the City of Lakeway, and I'm also on the Charter Review Committee. Excuse me, not Charter, Comprehensive Review. 2 very different things. My successes that I have is mostly centering around traffic in roads. Like I said, we had a lot of issues on Flint Rock Road. So what I did is I started working with the city staff. I was actually one of the big driving forces as to why the Flint Rock and 620 intersection was changed. My husband almost got rear-ended with my little boy, and I heard multiple stories, so I worked with Tech Staff, the city staff, to change that. I was helped with lowering the speed limit on Flint Rock Road in some of the areas, as well as Serene Hills Drive in the Serene Hills neighborhood. Because of resident feedback there, we actually implemented 2 stop signs, and I was instrumental in that. My 3 main areas that I really focus on is strategic growth. I think we need to covet our commercial space. Once it's gone, folks. Number 2 is growing our businesses, balancing the budget. I'm financially conservative, and I look at always look at our budget every year, and taxes. I think we need to start raising more and more sales tax so that we can lower property tax. Number 4 is strategic development. I'll get into more of that later. My name is Kelly Brentison. I'm number 1 on the ballot. I'm an experienced leader, and I'm willing to serve you another 2 years. I appreciate your support.
Hi everybody, thank you for coming out. Thank you to Jennifer and Jerry for hosting this. We were all concerned there wasn't going to be a forum, and now we've got 3 forums. There'll probably be some more, so thank you. My name is Matt Sherman. My wife and I have lived in Lakeway for 5 years. Our daughter has lived here her entire life, 3.5 years. She was born right here at Baylor. Her favorite park and our favorite park is Dragon Park. I think that's an undiscovered gem of Lakeway. It's never packed. You guys should go check it out if you're not there. I'm a pilot. I'm an avid mountain biker, and I work in the advertising industry. I got involved with working for you all and for the city 2 years ago as part of the Aviation Zoning District Committee. That was chaired by Ron Massa. I really enjoyed learning how the government work is different from the private sector. I came into it expecting one thing, and it's completely different. I'm glad I had that experience. I left that committee when we finished that project, wanting to do more. So I ran for our local HOA board and was successful, won there. Currently serve as the president. We have around 220 homes, about $170 million of real estate value that represents. But then I wanted to go back out wider than just our neighborhood. So I met with Councilmember Sanjeev Kumar, who at the time was the council liaison on Zapco. If you're not familiar with it, I wasn't super familiar with it at the time. Zapco is not a laser tag game at High Five. Sometimes I wish it was. It stands for zoning and planning. We get things prior to council, whether it's a change that somebody wants to make in a zoning area, a variance they want, or something else with a project. Some items we can make the final determination on. Other items we then will recommend to council on what we think they should do. We operate within our current ordinances as well as our city's comprehensive plan from 2020. So last year, when discussion started about, hey, comprehensive plan is coming up in about 4 or 5 years, it's time to set up a new committee and start working on that, you can guess who was eager to go and join that as well. Council unanimously appointed me as the chair of the comprehensive plan 2024. Kelly, as you mentioned, also serves on it, and Jenny is now the council liaison for ZAPCO. And we just met this past Tuesday. So the logical next step now is for me to serve you all from a council seat. I look forward to the opportunity. My big thing is that honoring our heritage and shaping our future, as we see growth, as we see societal demands change, we must adapt to that as a city, but we must do it in a way that the character we all love here in Lakeway is absolutely going to remain. Matt Sherman, thank you very much.
All right, thank you so much for being here. Is this working?
Yes.
Okay. I'm Jennifer Szymanski. I'm one of your current council members.
Is it turned on?
Yeah, it's turned on.
Okay.
It's not working. Try this again. There we go. Okay, I'll start over in case you didn't hear me. I'm Jennifer Szymanski. I'm one of your current council members. I was elected 2 years ago to city council. I'm really happy to see everyone here. I think this is a bigger crowd than we had last year here in Rough Hollow. I live in Rough Hollow currently. My husband and I moved here 12 years ago to Lakeway before we had children. I lived in Old Lakeway for 7 years. We had 2 children, just like Kelly. Our children were born here in Lakeway as well. They go to Lake Travis schools, and we moved to Rough Hollow in 2019. Part of my reasons for running for council back then, 2 years ago, things have changed a lot. I think my experience on council now really makes me have different reasons for wanting to be reelected, wanting to see a lot of projects through that we've started. We're growing at an even faster rate than I realized initially. Public safety was one of my big concerns. As a 15-year member of law enforcement and working in Austin my entire career, I think I had a lot of concerns, as well as much of our community, about the direction potentially that we could be going with regard to public safety and other political ideologies. And that was something I didn't want to see happen in Lakeway. It's happened pretty much everywhere else in Travis County. Public safety to me is extremely important. I know it's important to all of our families here. And that was a big reason that I ran the first time around. And I've invested a lot of time and energy into that on the council currently. And I want to continue to do that. And I think our council has done a wonderful job of providing our law enforcement with the best tools they could possibly have, but there's still work to be done. And that's always a priority for me. We're also growing, as I stated, at a very fast pace, and there's a lot of projects that are ongoing, like the town center that we're getting ready to, they broke ground on that during my first term. And I'm looking forward to seeing that through. I think there's a lot of opportunities there that address some of the other priorities I have, which are small businesses, bringing small businesses into that town center, keeping us a unique, beautiful place, seeing our parks bond through. We have the parks bond on the ballot. If that's approved, there's a lot of projects that we're gonna be undertaking as far as expanding our parks and building new parks. One of the new parks will be here in Rough Hollow, and I know that that's extremely important to a lot of our Rough Hollow families as well. Not sure what I missed, but I have 10 seconds left. So I look forward to being reelected, and I'm always happy to answer any questions you have specifically, and thank you for being here tonight.
All right. Good evening, everybody. First off, thank you to Jerry and Jennifer for pulling this off. I know It's not easy to just pull this out of the hat. It's great to see a full room here tonight. My name is Christopher Levy. I'm running for City Council. I've been in the region for 30 years. My family moved out here in '94 from Northern Texas. My wife and I, we live in Old Lakeway, along with my father and his family. We love it there. My background, I was formerly, I went to West Point, got out of the Army, came here to Austin, Texas, started producing live music, webcasts from Herc Cuban out here at the backyard, the original backyard.
Chris, can you speak up? We can't hear you back here.
Sure, yeah, I'd love to. Maybe we probably should turn the audio up on the board too. Lived out here for quite some time. My current focus, my wife and I, Pearl, as I mentioned, we live in Old Lakeway with our daughter, Nia Levy. And I'm also currently the 30-year CEO of a cybersecurity company called DRM. We provide all of the security for most of the major media and entertainment companies that stream video on the internet. My area of expertise is in cryptography and, thank you, and anti-piracy technology. So that's what I do on a daily basis. As far as the community, so we've spent a pretty considerable amount of time volunteering our time and resources, a couple different foundations. We've been doing some work with Lake Travis Education Foundation, quite a bit of work sponsoring events that they've been doing over the past year. My wife's actually hosting a brunch for the charity tomorrow, the Butterfly Brunch. She'll be there at that if you want to join us. And we've enjoyed working with the Education Foundation. They have some serious challenges they're facing right now with fundraising and just generally what's going on with the kind of growth of the region and the school district and how to adapt to that. So that's been good. And recently I joined the Lakeway Police Foundation and worked with some other members of the crowd to renovate that organization. We've redone the board, we've rebranded the organization. And we're doing a lot of great things. I don't know if you've been following some of the stuff that we're doing down at City Hall, but we are making some pretty considerable donations to the city that are to be used for the police department. We're going to donate about $21,000 at the next city council meeting. Why did I get triggered to run for city council? Well, I love Lakeway. I know probably half the people in the room personally. I've been a citizen of this community for quite some time, and I just want to use my 30 years of finance and cybersecurity experience to the best of my abilities to help really benefit the city and its residents. My name is Christopher Levy. Thank you.
Okay, so we're going to start with Matt and rotate back around. Kelly will go last. So every question we're going to start with a different candidate so that everybody gets a chance to be first and last. Okay. Commercial zoning doesn't necessarily mean retail space that generates sales tax revenue. Do you support more retail businesses in Lakeway? If so, how would you attract them and where should they go? What kinds of commercial retail would you like to see? Would you ever consider a 24-hour establishment like an IHOP or a big box store like a Costco? Why or why not? Matt.
Sure. So this came up recently at a ZAPCO meeting. It's also going to come up at your council meeting this coming Monday. Commercial retail should go in a commercially zoned plat. We have a project that was in front of us at ZAPCO that the developer wanted to come and say, well, it's commercial now, we want to switch that to residential, effectively. And we heard what we always seem to hear, which is if you've ever been out to this plot of land, it's very, very difficult to develop on. So it can't be commercial, it must be residential. Or it's the flip side. It's very, very hard to develop on, so it can't be residential, it must be commercial, which I don't understand. The dozers don't know the difference. But we voted to recommend to council that they deny this request, because if we lose our commercial, even though it can be commercial business, not like commercial office, not necessarily retail, it'll be gone, and we only have so much land that's left. So, just my recent vote, yes, we do need to keep commercial retail. As far as a big box store, this discussion has come up as well. The short answer is yes, I do support having a big box store, or a store like a Trader Joe's here. I think many people would love it. I know my wife would love to have a Trader Joe's here. The trick is you put it somewhere that it just remains inside of city limits, but it's not in a place that's going to impact everybody on their day-to-day life. If it's to it, we still have to deal with the potential traffic, but we get 0 retail tax dollars for that. So if there's a space for a big box retailer, let's keep it inside of Lakeway city limits, not necessarily where everyone is going to be every day. As far as a 24-hour restaurant, sure, open to seeing what that might look like, and if the resident demand is there, then we should absolutely review it.
These are a case-by-case situation here with the, sorry, the sun's right in my eyes. This is a case-by-case situation with the zoning. I think for me, and there's a couple areas we'll talk about tonight where I rely heavily on our staff because this is something that they do every day. They do understand those issues that some of us don't understand. And so it's a case-by-case situation with these rezones and the requests that might come up. And a lot of that's based on, you know, the environment, the financial environment that we're in, the economy, and what makes sense and what's going to help taxpayers at the end of the day and what's not. So those are case by case. As far as when I read the 24-hour question, I laughed out loud and showed it to my husband because when we moved here from Austin, we laughed. We were working shift work. We were both in law enforcement, and we would get off work around, 10 o'clock at night, 11 o'clock sometimes, or even later, and there's absolutely nowhere to eat. And then we would, on our off days, we would be hungry for dinner later at night. And we were like, surely it's 9 o'clock, there's gotta be something, right? There was nothing. This was back in 2012. There was absolutely nowhere to eat at 9 o'clock at night. Didn't matter what day of the week. So I think we've made a lot of progress in that realm. There are a lot more places 10 years, 12 years later to go and to eat, and businesses that are available to us. I don't love the idea, honestly, of a 24-hour place. I don't know that it's necessary. I think we've made a lot of progress. I wouldn't be closed off to it, but speaking from experience in Austin, I would have some concerns that I think the residents might share with me. As far as big box, I don't know where that would go. I would be open to the conversation, but I'm not too sure. I haven't seen a place where that might be feasible up to this point in my time on council. Did I answer everything? Okay, thank you.
Go ahead, sir.
So the struggle between commercial versus retail space, property tax versus sales tax, it's a big dilemma. We had an opportunity a while back, and I say in the city's past history, to possibly take on some big box stores. Obviously, the voters didn't really agree with that, and the city didn't move in that direction, and BK really did kind of snack up a lot of those. But I'm just going to say what Matt said. It's actually in my notes here. I actually think having something like a Trader Joe's here would be awesome. I would love to see like a 24-hour Kirby Lane Cafe or something that's maybe toned down a little bit. As far as, how are we going to solve and attack the problem? Well, there's a lot of business owners in the room, I know, because I know many of you personally, and I know that you've had to attack the problem in some cases by moving your businesses out of the city and operating your businesses there, and it shouldn't be that way. I feel like this is kind of a segue into question 12 because they're somewhat related. For me, as far as like how to address the issue around commercial versus retail, sales versus property tax, one of the things that I was looking at, and I discussed with another council person who's here tonight about possibly tapping into this hotel tax fund. One of the primary things that you're allowed to do with it is to build a convention center and to market it. And Lakeway does not really have an event center, and we're missing out on a lot of sales tax and again, additional hotel tax. But we could have a convention center that we do weddings at, we have music events at, we could have corporate retreats there, we could have corporate, conventions. And so for me, those things are all deeply interwoven, and I think we really have to look at, these alternative solutions that are out there. Thank you.
If you've ever attended a city council meeting, you'll probably hear me say it multiple times, I'm fiscally conservative. What we can do to drive down our property taxes, I'm all for. We pay a lot here in Lakeway. In terms of commercial, we only have so much space, and once it's gone, it's gone. Nobody's gonna probably tear down an entire neighborhood to put up a big box store if our property taxes go too high. So I'm all for coveting our commercial space. One of the problems is when you have commercial space is that it doesn't mean retail where you're actually getting sales tax off of it. It could be a dentist, it could be a medical practice. So that's one thing to keep in mind. In terms of big box stores, there are big box stores wanting to come to Lakeway. Part of the PUD review and development committee, we get to hear certain things that are coming from our retail coach. We hired a retail coach to go out to these large, not just only large, but businesses and chains, etc., to see if they have interest in coming to the city. So there is interest. Actually, the city of Lakeway is working right now with talking with some landowners about potentially putting parcels together. There's more to come on that, and once the city is able to move forward with discussions, that will definitely be released. One of the reasons I was on as you know, I'm on the comprehensive review committee. The reason why we hired the firm that we did is they have an architecture on staff, and they also have an economic development person. What they will do is they're going to take a look at what we have, especially for our town square coming up. They're going to take a look at it, and they're going to put the best design forward that we are able to attract those large, not just big box stores, because I don't want you guys to get scared of that, but they are interested in coming. One of the other things is 24 hours. I know we're all scared about that. There are some benefits, like she said, to our first responders. We have nurses, we have doctors, we have staff that works 24 hours. So there is some potential, case by case only, not a blanket rule. Thank you.
In February of 2023, the Lakeway City Council unanimously denied LTISD's request to develop elementary school number 8 unanimously. For non-incumbents, how would you have voted and why? For incumbents, do you still feel you made the right decision? And we'll start with Jane.
Sorry, Chris, I gotta move the finger right.
Go ahead, make it up.
Sun in my eyes.
Make it happen.
Yes, so I do believe it was a unanimous vote, so obviously we voted that down. And yes, 100%, I feel confident that that was the correct vote. It wasn't an easy vote at the time, but now, as time has gone on, I definitely feel confident that that was the right decision. And a lot of that, I'll give Jennifer credit here, because there was a lot of feedback that came our way. For me, one thing I'll say multiple times tonight, I will always listen to the constituents. I get emails, phone calls, all those things come in, and this isn't about how I personally feel about certain things. To me, it's about what the majority of my constituents are saying. And especially in this scenario, where so many families were going to be impacted potentially by the decision. And, you know, at the time, there was some talk about the growth, because the growth was kind of the driving force right behind the bond to begin with. And that made sense. But at the same time, there was a lot of questions about if that growth was going to sustain itself. And because of the pandemic, you know, the growth really hasn't sustained itself. At least that's what we're hearing. And that's very concerning when we talk about a lot of, you know, how this bond money is going to be spent. Especially with the schools, because it's based on population. It's based on how many children we have and need to get into schools. So a lot of new information has come out that the growth may not be something that's going to sustain itself. And so a school right next to another school with a lot of traffic issues and other things was going to be problematic. And I really think, like I said, that's the number one reason. There's other reasons, but that's the number one reason why I believe that that's still the correct decision, and I'm happy with the decision.
Well, this is a tough one. I wasn't there when a lot of the discussions were going on around this. I've had several discussions with Superintendent Norton about the status of the relationship between the city and the school district. And at a high level, I think it's important that we all understand that we need to have a healthy relationship with LTISD. If it wasn't for Lakeway, there wouldn't be an LTISD. And I understand was a bunch of complex issues on the table. And I think Councilman Keith Trecker said it best at the time: we're either going to suffer from overcrowding or traffic. There is no good solution. And I think that is kind of where we're at today right now. And you know, I myself, knowing what I know about one component of the discussion, what I understand was that the school district had some previous discussions with the council and the mayor, and they had not necessarily magnified those discussions in the actual plans that they brought in front of the city. And in fact, the plans they brought in front of the city didn't really represent what some of the good faith discussions were. So in that case, I would have voted against it as well. But I still believe that we need to strengthen our relationship with LTISD. LTISD is, undergoing massive growth right now. They're unfortunately having to compete against the county now for land. I'm not sure if y'all are aware, but Travis County is buying up hundreds of acres of land now all along the 71 corridor where future schools are going to be built. In anticipation, they set up building parks, which is problematic for some of the new schools that are being considered out there. But I would have voted no had I been totally privy to all the conversations around the actual plans that were presented. And I do believe we need to strengthen our relationship with LTISD.
I was on council during that time. I voted no against it. You heard me, I'm a mother of 2 small children. We attend Lakeway Elementary. Anyone who's driven past Lakeway Elementary in the morning or in the afternoon pickup, it's a disaster. It is wall-to-wall cars and people can't get through. It's not safe for children. We at the time did not want to repeat the same mistakes as past. And I'm not saying it was a past mistake. The city has changed since Lakeway Elementary was built there in '86, quite a bit, right? I went to Rough Hollow Elementary when they did their PTO meeting to listen to the constituents. Those are Rough Hollow residents, those are Sweetwater, those are our neighbors. I spoke to so many people in regards to this topic and what was best. What the first call that I made was to Ellen Troxclair. If you know who Ellen Troxclair is, she is our House District Representative for 19. I said, look, Ellen, we need your help. Your constituents here in 19 need your help. The Sweetwater community truly deserves their own elementary. What can you do? So she gets on the horn and starts talking to other people in Travis County and Howard's office. She's talking to other representatives. They did whatever they could in terms of trying to get that school there. It just didn't work. Great thing is the demographics in our area is actually going lower. We don't have that high growth, that fast growth that we expected. Actually, number 8, elementary number 8, which would have been right down here on right on Bee Creek, is actually moving down to Hamilton Pool Road, where the growth truly is. It's not going out west, not like we thought, because of some of the development that's going out there. So again, today I would repeat, I would vote no and ask for Ellen Troxclair's help. Thank you.
So I started attending all council meetings since the Aviation Zoning District Committee back in 2022. So I'm very familiar with when this one came up, and I agree with the council's decision that they made on this, and it's the same decision I would have made. Something that stuck out to me, we absolutely need to be partners with LTISD and local developers and utility districts, that's a given. But what stuck out at me that I was turned off by was this idea that it was put on us, put on the council, if you don't do this, there's nothing else. This is pretty much it. It's like an exploding offer. Making a decision under duress like that never turns out well. I've made those types of decisions and I usually regret them later. So I commend council for denying this. The other thing is, you don't want to be the group that in 10 or 15 years, when we truly see this fully developed and both these schools right on top of each other, generating all that traffic, to be the ones where people drive by and they go, who thought this was a good idea? Like, who did this? Who did this? Now, by that point, all the council members will be long gone. Like, I don't know who did that. I'm not sure. So I completely agree with the decision. You could hear the temperament in the room from residents, like, we don't want this. That was the overwhelming piece that I think council probably acted on, as Jennifer said. Like, if the constituents are saying, look, we're here, we're showing up, we do not want this, please help us, then I think that's the right decision to make.
Okay, we're starting with Chris, right? Is that where we're at? Sure.
Yes.
I think so. This is a question from the audience. Lakeway elects council members at large, with the entire city voting for all 6 members. New developments like Rough Hollow and Flint Rock are taking on their own personalities, and some think Lakeway should shift to a district system. Each district would elect its own council member who resides in the district. Is this something you would support and why?
No, I don't support that, and I followed a lot of this dialogue online. I have obviously spoken pretty extensively about what I've learned during my campaign, and what I've known since I've lived here is that there's Lakeway Center, Lakeway proper, Old Lakeway, however you want to refer to it, where we live, where a lot of people in this room live. And there's a ring around Lakeway of other communities that don't feel like they're a part of Lakeway. Rough Hollow is a great example. The one we're in right now, on the day that we had our egg extravaganza event, they had their own Easter egg hunt because they didn't feel they were part of the Lakeway event for some reason. Same thing with Serene Hills, same thing with Alta Vista. I personally believe that yes, as an elected official, you do serve every person in the community. You can't necessarily, address every single person's needs. Most of the people that are on council will have specific constituent blocks that voted for them and support them, and they continue to address and speak to. But I think, fundamentally, yes, we should be serving all voters, but no, I'm not a fan of the whole district thing. I've seen how that works, and I just feel like it's very quickly falls into partisan manipulation that we should stay away from. Thank you.
I actually had a conversation with somebody that helped redo the district maps for the state of Texas, just coincidentally, actually. When it's redistricted, there's a lot that goes into it. There's statistics, there's population, there's boundaries, there's laws, and it's a disaster, folks. To have to do that, it would be a disaster here for Lakeway. The way you would have to maneuver, your neighbor here would be in this district and that person would be over there. It wouldn't work. Not the way we're set up. We're not set up on a grid. We have winding streets and it doesn't make sense based on population and how our city is laid out. In terms of just the greater outside of that, I live in Flint Rock Falls. I feel like I'm part of the community. I just wanted to add that. I think a lot of people do. I think it depends on what your interests are in the city. You may go to one thing, you may not go to the next. I have a lot of friends that live in Old Lakeway. I have friends that live all throughout the city, and I don't feel any different than they do. So again, I'm not for districting. The other problem with that is what happens if somebody doesn't want to run for that district? What if somebody in Flint Rock or Serene is like, no, I don't want to do all that? That's really amazing that you guys are willing to sacrifice your lives and your livelihood, your kids, your families, your business to do that, but I'm not going to do it. So where would we find a candidate if nobody's willing to step up? The other thing with that is you're not able to vote on the best candidate. You could just potentially get a warm body in there that says, well, nobody is running, so I guess I'll do it. Not somebody who's driven, who's knowledgeable, who really wants to strive to do a good job and represent all of Lakeway. So again, I would not support that. Thank you.
I don't support the idea either. I think a good council member is already out in the community, in person, talking to people, driving the streets, seeing all the different corners of Lakeway. I think the council is doing a good job of that now. We can look at 2 recent projects, bond proposals, the transportation bond, which did pass, and then this parks bond, which hopefully will pass. Those hit all sorts of areas of the city. So we're already hitting what would be potentially all these districts. You run into the issue of, are you going to find enough people that want to run? It's not easy running, I can tell you that. It's not always fun, but I think it is very deserving. So to echo what Kelly said, you might find yourself with just like a warm body who isn't going to actually put in as much work as somebody who lives totally across town from your district. So I'm not in favor of a district system.
I'm the same way. I'm completely against it, and I feel pretty strongly about it based on what happened in Austin when we did this, which wasn't too long ago. It's actually pretty recent history, and it has been awful ever since in Austin. For me, I've lived in 2 parts of Lakeway. There's not a part of Lakeway that I would be opposed to living in. I love all parts of Lakeway. Like they said, we have friends. This is a small community. There's absolutely no reason for us to have districts. I think it's a great point that, you vote for the best, most qualified person that you align with or that you think will represent your interests best. And yeah, I think there's absolutely no reason in a city of our size with the 20,000 population that we would ever need districts.
I'm going to combine these 2 questions because I think they're both pretty short answers. First, council recently approved a pilot program for our police department to use a license plate recognition system. Incumbents, how did you vote and why? Challengers, how would you vote and why? And in combination with that, would you be in favor of Lakeway using diversity, equity, or inclusion practices for hiring, promoting, or awarding city contracts or hiring city employees? Kelly.
You first.
You want me to, so how did you vote on the license plate recognition system and why? And then would you be in favor of using DEI practices to hire city employees or police officers? Okay, well, you can vary your answers. We have so many questions, we'll be here till 10. So I've told the candidates in advance. Do them separate?
Those are not the same questions.
Okay. How about a very short answer to the city just approved license registration system? How did you vote and why?
I can be open and honest. When this first came up, I didn't like it, and here's why. I'm a constitutionalist, and I feel like inside the United States, a lot of our constitutional rights are slowly getting chipped away. That's how I felt initially. After doing research on this and having discussions with police officers and folks in other areas that use LPRs, I'm in agreement tonight, and I was probably one of the most vocals against it. I believe that they do work. I have 2 small children. Abduction scares the living daylights out of me. There's a lot of crime that's coming in from the city of Austin. If somebody can be picked up because, XYZ 213 license plate comes in on 620 and our Lakeway Police Department is notified of that, I want them pulled over and arrested and out of our city as fast as possible. So I did vote in favor of that after learning more about it. Thank you.
So I looked to the chief, and when he explained the benefits of the LPRs and citing some other cities that have seen some success, I have concerns about it as well. As a parent, though, and having seen people drive by places and should this person be here or not, I'm also a fan of the benefits. So for me, the benefits far outweighed the potential controversy that surrounds them. So I'm a fan of it.
Well, I remember talking about this last time I was in this room. This was a huge point for me. We had license plate readers at one point in Rough Hollow that were removed. And again, for 5 years in my career, I worked for a fusion center with the Austin Police Department as an intel officer where we utilized and accessed license plate reader data. And on a daily basis, we're solving robberies, theft, all kinds of property crimes, robberies, and violent crimes, and apprehending fugitives on a daily basis throughout Central Texas based on those readers. Here, they're gonna start working immediately. As soon as we get them, you're gonna see it. We're gonna start picking up stolen vehicles, one after the other. Stolen vehicle, there's one reason a stolen vehicle drives into Lakeway. They're coming in here to do something nefarious, that's it. There's no other reason for them to be in here. And, we're lucky for that in a way. In Austin, they're all over the place for all kinds of reasons. There's one reason why they're here. And these license plate readers are going to be a huge success. And thank you to council for doing your research, talking to the people, talking to law enforcement, and understanding the benefits of the license plate readers. I'm really excited. That's another thing that I'm looking forward to being reelected so I can see that completely through. But I know that our chief is a big believer in it, and our council has voted for it, and it'll be implemented here pretty soon.
Well, so just real quick to speak to the camera we had in Rapallo, obviously, our former police chief signed a contract he shouldn't have signed. I say that with all due respect to him. That camera was not supposed to be where it was. But that being said, I'm a fan of license plate readers. Anyone who says that they don't want to be surveilled, if you would, just please leave your smartphone at the counter on the way out. License plate readers have been shown to be effective in every major city in America. They're unobtrusive, especially when they're mounted in the air. The flock cameras are actually susceptible to somebody just putting a trash bag over them. They don't work that well. My big concerns about the LPRs would be the chain of custody and access to the video, who has access to the actual systems. The mayor and I had a conversation last year about the flock camera, and the concerns are that we want to make sure that they're not being used for nefarious reasons, such as people breadcrumbing people or trying to use them in ways that they aren't designed to be used for law enforcement. That's extremely important. So I would vote for LPRs, and I'm glad that the council did. Thank you.
Of Lakeway implementing DEI practices to hire either employees of the city or including police officers. Matt.
I'm a fan of hiring the best possible candidate.
No, absolutely not. I stand by the Texas legislature. For a living, I am in the Capitol all day, every day. I follow this issue all the way through. I stand by what we did in the legislature, and no is the answer for me.
I think all you need to do is just look in the news and see how DEI is performing. I frankly believe that also, though, if you just look across our city and look at all of our new employees, our new police officers, our new judge, people that are administrators in the court, people who have been hired in the city over the past several years, I think Lakeway is doing more than a better job of being diverse and equitable and inclusive. I just don't think that we should be implementing a plan that can be easily manipulated and go south like we've seen it in so many cases recently.
I'm not for DEI. If you guys actually come to our city councilman meetings, you can see that we have a very diverse group of folks that are being hired into our Lakeway Police Department right now. I stand by our chief. He is hiring the best candidate. I know if I have to dial 911 at 1:30 in the morning, that I have the best person showing up to my house that's equipped, knowledgeable, and has the ability to perform their job duties. Thank you.
Lakeway takes in almost $1 million in hotel tax every year and currently has an approximately an $8 million total in that fund that they're holding. What would you like to see the city's hotel occupancy tax fund dollars spent on, and how do you feel about the hotel occupancy tax in Lakeway overall? In a combination, what are some things that you might do to attract? What kinds of things do you want to see the city use that on? So I'll give the first person 10 seconds to explain what that is in case people don't know.
So the hotel occupancy tax is the tax that the hotel collects and then has to provide to the city. They're required to collect that. And the city, it goes into their fund, into a hot tax fund. And the hot tax fund, the big issue here is we can have all kinds of ideas, thoughts, and all these things, which we all do on council, about what to do with that, but the legislature really tells us what we can and can't do. So we can have an idea, and then we can run it by our staff, city manager, to determine whether or not that's going to qualify as something we can spend the money on. And unfortunately, in my 2 years on council, most of the answers have been no. That doesn't qualify. We can't use it for that. So what I would say is, and this is this is something I've been really interested in since I got on council, because I wasn't aware of how large our hot tax fund was, and that's outrageous to me, that we have this much money sitting in a fund. How can we spend it? So we hired someone to look into this, and frankly, I don't have the answers as a council member that I want. I don't think we've gotten enough out of that individual at this moment. There's still work to be done. What I would say right now is that the best way for us to spend that is to look at the new town center that we're getting ready to build. Because that is a potential place where we can actually spend money. You have to be able to show that you're bringing people into the city that are going to fill and occupy hotel rooms. So whatever you're using, whether you're sponsoring an event or building a convention center or a conference center, it has to be something that you can show is going to bring outsiders into the city that are going to stay in hotels. That's one of the stipulations. That is pretty much the general stipulation to how you can use the money. So I think we have a huge opportunity with the town center coming up. I've had a lot of other ideas as well, and I think there's potential for us, whether we hire an outside lobbyist or we use TML, to lobby the legislature, because it's my opinion from what I've heard in the last 2 years that there needs to be some change in the legislation as far as the ability to spend hot tax funds. We have $8 million, population 20,000. We have to be able to spend the money somehow.
Okay, so I spoke to this earlier, and $8 million is a lot of money for a city that has a $19 million a year budget. We've been averse to touch it. There are some very stringent rules in Texas on what you can do with this fund. The very first one, though, is the one I spoke of earlier, which is to build a convention and visitor information center. Now, they describe it as a convention center, but it's capable under law of being used for any legal, lawful event. And so, again, as I spoke about earlier, for me, just looking at what you can do with it, things like registration of convention delegates, probably not a good use of our money. Advertising and promoting programs to attract tourists and convention delegates to the convention center, probably not a good use of our money. Improving sports complexes, funding the enhancement or upgrading of existing sports facilities, funding transportation systems for the city. I think a lot of these things just aren't a good fit for Lakeway, and I feel like what's going on with Main Street and just in general, we don't have a place where people, like our daughter was born at Lakeway Regional Medical Center too, but we got married at Vintage Villas. Why? Because there's really nowhere to get married in Lakeway other than the resort, which is a pretty big bite. And so we're looking at kind of missing out on heads and beds revenue, which increases the hotel tax fund that we can use to build a convention center that increases sales tax revenue because people come and stay here, and while they're here, they spend money. So that's what I believe is the first and foremost and really only thing we should do with the money. And there's really not a whole lot of debate about it because it's under the Texas law, so we only have very few options of what we can do with it. So, thank you.
I've had somebody actually ask me, do we get rid of it? Because we have so much money. The majority of sales hotel occupancy tax or hot tax that comes in is for people outside of our area. Not locals, unless you're like me who got stuck out of their house because of a freeze. So if we stop having freezes, us locals probably won't be paying into it that much. All joking aside, one of the stipulations with that we always constantly fight against is pesky things called laws. There are a lot of regulations of what we can spend it on. Actually, for sports, we cannot spend anything sports related in Travis County. Travis County is a population of 1 million plus. So because we fall inside of that category, we can't spend any money on sports. Now what we can do is when LTYA comes to us and asks for money for advertising for a lacrosse tournament that is nationwide that's going to be hosted here in Lakeway, we can say yes to that. We can pay for the advertising. We can't pay for the sports facility. We can't pay for that component. One of the things, thank you to actually Gretchen Vance, I'm going to give you a little shout out here, is that Gretchen met a gentleman during a meeting recently where we are now, the city of Lakeway is now actually working with the Texas Hotel Association, the president and founder, or CEO, excuse me. What we are going to do is try to lobby and get new law put in, basically a carve out for Lakeway, because we are not like Austin, thankfully. We're not Austin. So that we would be able to then go outside of some of the rules, because we live in a county with a 1 million+ population. Thank you.
So hot funds are pretty simple. Their only goal is to drive tourism and more visitors to Lakeway. That's why guests are paying for it when they're checking in the hotel. The hotel itself is not actually paying for it. I like that recently, maybe 5 or 6 months ago, a group of hotels came to us and said, we'd like some of the hot tax actually to do more advertising for our own hotels. That's a great idea. They help generate that revenue. They can spend that revenue to bring more people back in. This coming Monday at the council meeting, there's going to be an update specifically from the Hot Funds consultant, and there's a lot of great ideas in there and saying, here's what some of our options are. Kelly spoke to one that's a big one, is having a carve out for sporting events, because we are in Travis County. There's over 1 million people, so we can't do sporting events right now. So I'm a fan of what the consultant has been doing and the upcoming project. I took a look at it in the council meeting packet already, and looking forward to hearing what comes out of that on Monday. The more we can encourage groups to come to us and understand what hot funds can be used for, hopefully they will keep doing that. Sandy Cox came to us last year and picked up $1.5 million for the Texas Arts Center. That's a great use for it, and it still didn't put a dent in it. We do have $8.6 million as of the most current report in hot funds ready to use. So I'm looking forward to Monday night and hearing the update from the consultant. And there's some good ideas that he has outlined in the, here are some options that we have to look at going forward.
First, I keep forgetting, is Chris first? I think so. Yeah.
Oh, sure. Why not? Let's do it.
Okay. All the MUDs say we are in drought conditions, and it's obvious if you look at the lake. What measures would you bring forward to help the city and the residents to conserve water? Or how would you change or influence rapid development?
Okay, that's a two-part question. First off, what my family did was last year is we turfed our entire property. We did it because we were tired of throwing water on the yard. We were tired of all the blowers. We were tired of all the chemicals. We were tired of all the weeds. So we worked with a well-known turfing company who is in fact in the room tonight, who's turfed quite a few Lakeway homes. And you can get a variance from the city if any portion of your yard is visible from the roadway. You do have to go in front of the Building and Development Committee and get a variance approved. And you have to buy an ad in the local newspaper. It's not that big of a deal. But more importantly, yes, we're dangerously low on water. If you haven't been to one of Earl and Stephanie's presentations or seen it or gone to the city council meetings, you really need to stop, drop, roll, and get up there. We are facing possibly at the end of the summer, if we have an extremely hot summer like we have now, and we don't start abiding by the water restrictions, it could be that when Christmas rolls around, you get 100 gallons of water a day, or no water at all. And we are facing some extreme pressure around that. There are no extra sources of water for the Lakeway mud, for example. Some of the other muds are cutting back on their irrigation windows as well. I put on my blog on my website today on Facebook, my campaign page, that maybe we have a city program where somebody goes around and just checks sprinkler heads, flappers on toilets, exposed water connections, and these other types of obvious things. There's other things like pressure washing is illegal right now. There are eco solvents you can use on your home or your properties that use a lot less water. I would just encourage everybody to get in touch with the mud and take a look at what's going on. And unfortunately this summer, a lot of us are going to have to really work peacefully with our neighbors to accommodate the enforcement of these water restrictions, and I think that's something that we can all do together peacefully.
Last year, City Council passed a zero-scaping ordinance, so that actually allows for turfing in our yards now. It was something that wasn't popular in past years or decades, but it is something that the City Council moved forward with. In terms of water, I surely would rather have tap water coming out of my faucets than making sure I have a green lawn. So that's one of the things that I personally have done for a long time is conserve water. What the city can do, and can mandate, is when we have new developments, have energy or more efficient appliances. So toilets that flush. We can actually save, I believe, 40% of our water that comes out of into our home by just having proper equipment installed into our household. So that's a big thing. But overall, there's two things. We have Lakeway Mud and WCID 17. El Mud has their intake pipe is higher. WCID 17 can actually go longer without running out of water. So that is one thing that they're talking about. But overall, I think it really comes down to us being responsible. Do you guys want green yards or do you want water in your taps? Again, for me, my vote is the later one. So again, take a consideration into that. Definitely go out and look at some of the El Mud and WCID 17, Jason Homan presentations. They're online, and you can learn more about it. Thank you.
So I've been going to all these presentations. What triggered me was when I went down to Lakeway City Park about a month ago, and there was a guy out there on a lawnmower mowing the grass in the lake. There was docks sitting up against the banks that were even higher. Like, this isn't good. Like, we've got a problem. As I mentioned before, I'm the president of our local HOA, and one thing that's in our CC&Rs, of course, as many of you in HOAs will be aware of, is you need to keep your landscaping looking nice. Put it out to our board and our management company saying, hey, we are not going to send out fines or violation notices right now, because that would be in opposite effect of water conservation measures. If somebody has a dead palm tree still from like 4 years ago, that does need to go. We've all seen some of those. The same thing with the city. If there was a zero-scape that was passed, thank you to Lewis for bringing that up. But if there's anything that's currently in our codes, and there are still areas that need to be improved that are in opposition of the idea of conserving water, then we need to either change that ordinance or just make sure it's out there that we are not going to be enforcing this when a drought condition is triggered. The other thing I'll do once on council is when we are in a drought condition, we will receive an update from one of our utility providers. I have talked to both Jason and Earl. They're both on board with this. So similar to how Aaron Daigle provides to the finance update at the beginning of the meeting, one of them will attend and provide us with, hey, here's the status on water. Here's what's going on and you guys should be aware of. As far as development goes, the current max that, speaking to Elma, they have available to developers, because this comes up a lot. Well, why do I need to stop watering my lawn if they're still building houses? That development number and that cap of what they can sustain, they are significantly under that cap right now. And that cap is not set in the best of times. It actually looks at when there is a drought on record, and that's what they set it to. Final piece is the idea, like, what does happen if we go too low? Like, do we turn on a tap and nothing will happen? There is an interconnectivity with Austin, so water will still come. It will be very expensive, and it will very likely be on an allotment basis. Thank you.
So I believe it was unanimous, but yes, Lewis brought forward the zero-scaping ordinance, which was, it provoked a lot of good conversation as we led up to the final vote with a lot of our stakeholders in that regard. And it's been really a learning experience for me. Water is not my expertise, but I've learned a lot. I did the El Mud tour as well, and another thing that hasn't been mentioned is that we have other muds out here in Rough Hollow. We're actually serviced by 11, 12, and 13, I believe, and so we're not El Mud and we're not 17 as of right now. So there's that factor as well. For me, I would always support anything like the zero-scaping or any ideas brought forward by the Central Texas Water Coalition or any of these experts in the field. I support all those things. I'm definitely just as worried as everyone else. One of the reasons we moved here was, actually the reason we moved here was for the lake, for Lake Travis. And I think many of us are in the same boat, no pun intended, that we want to be able to utilize the lake. and also just have water, drinking water. So it's a huge concern, but I guess the last thing I'll say is that it's everyone in this room, everyone in the community that has to take part in this. It doesn't matter really what we think. Everyone has to conserve.
For the incumbents, what's been the most difficult vote you've had to take in the last 2 years? And is there anything that's happened recently that you wish were different about how the city's being managed? And for the candidates, what's something that you've seen on council that you wish was decided differently? And what's a big change that you would make once elected? Try to go first.
I honestly am kind of stumped on how to answer this one. I have a track record of successes. Anytime that you do a vote, you're not going to make everyone happy. That's just the way it is, right? Everyone has different viewpoints. Everyone has a different, background, knowledge that'll go into a decision. In terms of voting, one specific thing, I would think that everyone who has sat on council or is an elected official would be a liar if they said, I wish I would have maybe looked a little bit different into something, or I wish I would have had this conversation. We've all had that. So in terms of that, we can always go back and say, our shoulda, woulda, couldas. One change that I would like to see in Lakeway is, I honestly would like to see us come together a little bit more. Our city is rapidly growing in a different direction than those. I see folks who have been here for decades. Unfortunately, I moved here 17 years ago. The Lakeway then, what attracted us to Lakeway is not the Lakeway we are today. I loved that Lakeway. Unfortunately, that's not the Lakeway we live in anymore. So I do think that in some aspects, if we can take a look at getting a really true vision for the city, where do we want to go? Where are we going to be in 15, 20 years as a city? I moved here forever. My kids are young. I hope they come back in and visit me someday. So that is the one thing that I would like to see change, is that we all come together a little bit more. Thank you.
A sign variance. Sign variances are one that Zapco can make the final determination on. We had somebody a business that wanted to update their sign both in color and in size in a shopping center. The color made total sense. They weren't trying to go crazy. They just wanted it to look nice and match the other signs that were in the center, and that was an easy and encouraged, yes, please make that change. And they also said, well, while we're here, let's get a bigger sign. It's like, we have our ordinances here for a reason. And if we just start always handing out a variance over and over and over without having really good data from the applicant on here's why I specifically need this, then we start losing the integrity of our ordinances. So that was an example where a recent vote where I stood behind it, both having to tell somebody yes and at the same time no. That's not always easy to do. Something that concerns me that I currently do see and hear about when attending council meetings is this concept of, and this discussion of, well, let's look at what other cities similar to our size are doing. Let's look elsewhere. What is that place doing? What are they doing? What are they doing? Now you might think, well, maybe they're just trying to get a read on it, but the context is absolutely not coming out, let's look at what not to do. It's looking at, well, let's see what other people do. They probably figured it out, we should do that. I disagree completely. I want to be setting the standard. Lakeway does set the standard. We have a beautiful city here. I want other cities to come to us and say, hey, you guys did a great job. We should be aware of what other cities are doing, sure, but my concern is the context of how it's being brought up. Similar to Texas law as well. Texas has to do it, so we have to do it this way. I have concerns about just how easy we just roll over and say, well, are we sure? Let's look at that really closely and sure, maybe there is a way we can do this. Still be legal, still be in compliance, and still maintain the character of Lakeway.
So I'll try to answer Jennifer's questions as directly as possible. For me, the most difficult was, we talked about it earlier, was the school vote. because at the time, it wasn't cut and dry in my mind at all, what was the right thing to do was. And, you know, shortly thereafter, we, meaning a lot of people in Rough Hollow and my children, were promptly rezoned to a new school. So a lot of people in the community were not happy about that. So that's very difficult. That was definitely the most difficult in the moment. And then in the weeks after and months after, fortunately for me and us, I believe this is gonna work out in our favor, and we did the right thing. So that's the positive. As far as, I think you asked how the city is running and something we may wanna see different, was that your question? Okay. So we have a wonderful staff. I think our staff is amazing. I think our city is run very well. The only thing I would say that I want to do looking forward is with our budget. I think trimming down our budget is something that I'm interested in doing. And I think I've thought about ways to do that. And one of the ways that we might be able to do it is bringing some things in-house. So we have contracts. We have people on contracts kind of spread out throughout different aspects of the city. And, you know, I just think that if there was one thing I was gonna change or look into, that's one of them. And one of the big reasons is because it could have a huge impact on our budget, which would ultimately save taxpayer dollars, and I'm always interested in that. So.
Well, I'll be blunt. If I was on council looking back, I did not and do not approve of the manner in which our recent judge's contract was not renewed. It was handled unprofessionally. It was handled unethically. It was handled outside the boundaries of normal HR processes, especially in the state of Texas. And if we're going to talk about comparing ourselves to other communities, to take something from Matt said, we shouldn't call someone and tell them that they're being paid too much and then turn around when they agree to take a haircut and later tell them that now we're investigating them. One thing. Second thing, we have no business having an outside attorney on the city's contractual staff. We should have an employee of the city who is an unbiased member of the employee group who run the city. They're called in-house counsel, and that person should be on the payroll, not on an hourly basis, not there to make issues that come up more complex or less complex based on their billing hours and how their firm perceives the issues that are in front of them. Thank you.
Raise your hand. Okay. We'll do one more question. I will say this briefly. I go to a lot of meetings, a lot of different board meetings, different cities, counties, school districts, everything. In my opinion, the city of Lakeway, I love the council. They hardly ever vote together. I know that sounds very contentious, but I love it. Like they all have their own minds, their own thoughts. They're not pressured by other council members. In my opinion, and I go to almost every council meeting, they're amazing. Here we go. Lakeway restricts the number and location of single-family residences used as short-term rentals. Do you own a single-family residence in Lakeway that you currently lease but cannot get a short-term rental permit due to these restrictions? And if so, would you be in favor of changing the rules? And we're going to start with Matt.
I own a single-family residence, but I live in it. I don't charge our daughter anything to live there either. It's our newest roommate. I think just to expand on that question a little bit, so our limit is not yet hit. I believe it's 25 or so.
25.
Yeah, it's 25, but where some people run into an issue is they're within the buffer zone of how many can be stacked next to each other. We recently took this on at Zapco with a change for short-term rentals, which was people that wanted to receive a special use permit for a short-term rental had to go through the BDS department, then Zapco, then council. Zapco or council said, can we simplify this? Can we break it up so single-family residents go all the way through, but not condominiums? And I pushed hard and said, no, look, put them all the same, single-family residence or a condominium can be administratively approved. The area that we need to focus on are for neighboring residents to understand how they bring a complaint if a short-term rental is having a big blowout party or something to that effect. The public doesn't seem to yet understand that as difficult as it is, if a neighbor is having an issue or being a nuisance, you do need to report it right away. If you wait until Monday to call, there's not anything that anybody can really do at that point. So I think it's a public education issue. We also today happily have not had to ever pull a special use permit for a short-term rental due to that property being a nuisance. So I know it's easy to say like, oh gosh, if it's a short-term rental, it's gonna be wild and crazy. Well, I've got neighbors that are wild and crazy and they live there full time. So you don't necessarily think just because it's a short-term rental, it's gonna be a disaster.
So I guess we're not going to get to talk about the Death Star bill, which makes me really sad. But this is somewhat related to that because, unfortunately for us, we may not have any say whatsoever on any of the short-term rentals in Lakeway if the Death Star bill makes its way through and it passed this session and it's going through the courts now because it was immediately struck down and now it's going through the courts. So we'll see what happens. But
Jenny, can you just take 15 seconds and briefly describe what that is? Most people don't know what the Death Star bill
So
is.
in layman's terms, it's basically, it was an initiative initially to prevent political subdivisions. So municipalities and counties from adopting any type of ordinance that is one of two things, illegal or via state law. So it's already illegal in state law or unconstitutional. And we're in this position because I'm not blaming Lakeway, even though we may have been an offender at some point, but there are a lot of political subdivisions across the state of Texas who have very illegal, very unconstitutional ordinances on their books. And the state of Texas is fed up with it, and they passed this incredible omnibus Death Star bill, that's what they call it. I think it's like a fun name, but we'll see what happens with it. And if it does make it through and it does actually go into effect, it's gonna have a massive, just massive implications in terms of what we can do as a city council when it comes to creating new ordinances, changing new ordinances, or having any say whatsoever on things like short-term rental. That's on the list of this omnibus bill that would kill our ability to do and regulate a lot of what we regulate. So short-term rentals, just real quick, I've owned a short-term rental before. I have no issues with them being in Lakeway. I think we're unique because we've been a kind of a tourist town. I mean, there are people who come here for the lake and weddings, and it's just, you know, we have a lot of out-of-towners that come and rent Airbnbs or short-term rentals. So, you know, I think there are some concerns, but I think what we've seen so far in my time on council is that none of those concerns have really risen to the level of us having to pull a permit, or even the ones that have come before us. I've yet to see one that even had a legitimate law enforcement response where there was an actual problem on a complaint. So I feel pretty good about where we are with it now, but I think everyone should know that this may not even be in our purview at some point.
Well, yeah, so Pearl and I, we do own several, properties in Old Lakeway, one of which we did last year think about setting up as a short-term rental. I spoke to Councilwoman Vance about it. I looked through the city website and called the city. It's not an easy process, and it probably shouldn't be. I feel like though some of the process is a little burdensome, maybe it could be thinned down a bit. I also had a discussion with Mr. Sherman about making parity between condos and homes, and that if they both, are considered rentals, they should either, preferably, I would prefer they both just go in front of City Council for approval instead of, one going to ZAPCO and one going to City Council. The last piece we also talked about is that, we can do a better job, and I don't know this, but we talked about it a little bit, about curating the list. A lot of times people sign up and then they disappear, or they sell their home, or they lease their home and don't remove themselves from the list, or there's some other defect in their application that they haven't completed. So there is some work that could be done on the actual queue of people that are going to want a short-term rental, curating the list, making sure it's viable. That's what I mean.
I do not own a short-term rental here in Lakeway. I've had some conversations in regards to this with folks who live in Fredericksburg. Anyone know anyone who lives in Fredericksburg? Short-term rentals are taking over some of those neighborhoods, and it's becoming a lot of problems. It's now become a destination nationwide for wine country, which is great because it's booming in the economy. But those residents who actually live there, it's changing your day-to-day life. You know, you have a bridal party that comes in from New York. You have a bachelor party that comes in from Washington State. People are coming in from all over the nation. They don't have skin in the game in the city, and they're changing the way your life lives day to day. Now, in terms of our current short-term rental, I do agree with it. There are protectors in place. We have a 1,000-foot barrier. That means a radius all the way around. If there's a short-term rental, you cannot have one if it's within 1,000 feet of that. That helps secure that you won't have 5 short-term rentals across the street from you. So I do agree with that. In terms of the Death Star bill, yes, Jenny did put some information in this. When it was written, it was written a mess. It really was. It contradicts itself in some aspects. It doesn't make sense in others. The reason why it was written is there's cities like Austin, San Antonio, Dallas that went rogue. There's also small towns in West Texas that went rogue. So what's going to happen is it's going to unfortunately impact us here in Lakeway. It's a beautiful community. It truly is. We have ordinances that are in place that are almost similar to an HOA, but not overstepping like an HOA, and that's why we all moved here. It's beautiful. Death Star bill, I would definitely reach out to Ellen Troxclair, who is part of the voting on this, and give her your thoughts and feedback as a Lakeway resident. She's a Lakeway resident. She needs to hear from you, your constituents. So again, thank you.
Okay, I know I didn't get to everyone's question or even all of mine. I tried to mix them in, so I feel like I was fair. I hope you think I was fair. If you did submit a question I missed you, I'm sorry. These candidates all have websites. I definitely encourage you, if you have a specific question, to reach out to them personally. That's part of their job, is to answer those questions and make sure that they differentiate themselves from the other candidates so that you know who to vote for and why to vote for them. I also want to remind you that early voting starts next Monday and runs until May 2nd. Yes, anybody? May 3rd? 30th, April 30th, and then voting day is Saturday, May 4th.
It's 2 months, 22nd.
22nd to the 30th, right? The 22nd to the 30th, and then May 4th is Saturday. Yeah. Although the roads are a little messy to Lakeway Activity Center, it is still a polling location, so that's the most popular voting location for sure in this area.
Jennifer, are we going to do 1 minute closing like we
I'll
normally
let
do?
everybody do a 1 minute closing, and we'll start with Kelly.
Oh, no, I said last time.
I think she's trying to be bossy.
I'm a leader.
All right, Matt, you go first.
All right, that's no problem. So as I mentioned before, I really enjoyed serving the city and serving all of you. When I talk to a resident or a business owner, they give me an idea, they need to be careful because I'm going to take that and go run with it and get it done. I see a local business owner here who I had a discussion with in December. And he said, Lakeway doesn't have like a local, they're not buying local. And I went back and looked on the books, we did not have a local procurement preference. So I went and spoke at that council meeting, and the very next one said, hey, we need to put a local, purchasing procurement requirement in here. And that ended up getting done. And it was just passed just the last month. So that's what I do. If you come to me with something, we We will go work on it immediately. It's not like, oh, that's an interesting idea, I'll kick it over to staff and see what happens. No, I will run with it and make sure that it happens. I'm looking forward to this next step of going to council. From there, we'll see where it goes as well. I've really enjoyed serving the city and everyone here for the past 2 years, and I appreciate the opportunity to do more. Thank you.
First of all, I just want to say thank you for being here. Thank you for supporting me in my last race and supporting me in this one. My favorite part about this job has been, like Matt just said, has been listening to constituents and some of the needs and wants that they have and being able to actually do something about it, because we have, like I said, a great staff in Lakeway who they'll jump on things and they'll get things done. And we've done quite a bit in that regard, and that's all done behind the scenes. It's not done in council meetings. It's done by our staff behind the scenes. Another thing I'll say too is, hopefully, there's only 4 of us up here, which is, a little bit surprising to me. So I would say to anybody in here to tell your friends and to encourage people to run for something or volunteer for something if you have an interest. Hopefully this setup isn't something that is intimidating. And hopefully, there's Christy back there in the room. I remember telling her or asking her, do you want to serve on this committee? Do you want to do this? So many times. And, she politely said, oh, I've got other things going on. And now we see that she does. I mean, just people in our community who are willing to step up and run, the fact that there's only 4 of us here, I'm hoping that as we grow, that more people will come forward and volunteer, whether it's on council, running for office, or on committees. And there's a way to do that through our website as well. You can volunteer, you can sign up to be a volunteer and show that you want to do that. I'm really looking forward to serving the city of Lakeway for 2 more years. I work in the state level of government every day. And the best part about coming home and coming to council meetings is up there, it's frustrating because not a lot gets done. It feels like not a lot is getting done. Here, we get stuff done, and we get, in a fairly short amount of time in the grand scheme of things. So I've really enjoyed it. It's been a great learning experience, and thank you for your support.
All right, well, first off, a lot of respect for Kelly and Matt and Jennifer for what they've said tonight. I'm also happy that we're not having an uncontested election here in Lakeway. I just want to say thank you to all the people in the audience who I know are supporters, who have reached out to me during the campaign or asked me questions or I've run into at City Hall. I'm glad that you're here tonight, learning your civic duty, but more importantly, finding out what the different candidates think about the different issues that are in front of us. The issues don't really vary that much, so the next couple forums, I imagine we're all going to tweak our language a little bit, but I would encourage all of you to encourage your friends to vote. There's also mail-in ballots. That seems to be a big thing right now. And there's 2 more forums coming up, if I could plug them real quick. There's the Lake Travis Democrats Forum on the 11th. That's going to be at the Lakeway Activity Center. 16th, I apologize. Excuse me, at Lakeway Activity Center.
By the way, we get things wrong on purpose because then we know you're listening when you correct us. I just want to speak for me at least.
And then we have the 18th, the Lake Travis Chamber of Commerce will be also hosting a candidate forum at the Lakeway Activity Center as well. So I hope to see all of you there. Thank you.
First off, thank you for allowing us to do the 1 minute. She typically does this. I've done this a couple times with her. I was elected first in 2022. Many of you guys were supporters. I hope that you're still a supporter. It's hard work being on council. Jennifer and I actually missed the night before our little boys, our babies started kinder. We were at council until 1:30 in the morning, I believe. So it's a sacrifice. It's a sacrifice that I'm willing to do. I enjoy this community. I love this community. I wanted to defend this community. One thing that you can guarantee with voting for me is that I'm willing to stand alone on many issues, one being our budget. I was the only person who voted against raising property taxes. I think we have a serious spending problem in Lakeway. It needs to be reviewed and it needs to be halted, especially with things that are coming up in the drop in financials that'll be coming, or revenue that'll be coming into the city once 620 goes underway. Again, I've appreciated a lot of your support. I hear your concerns. I listen to you guys. I research, and I'm your voice and advocate on council. So I really appreciate the continued support. I'm #1 on the ballot. My name is Kelly Brennison. Thank you. Have a good night.
Please take yard signs on your way out, and also I'm hoping and thinking there's school board signs back there. Just a plug for